A successful revolution has happened in Nigeria, but is right now in the process of being squandered by people who are short-sighted, people who look at themselves other than the society they ought to be looking out for. Young people saw an opening in the PVC that was being advertised, along with the BVA that will authenticate everything and make sure there's no cheating. They plugged into that opportunity by mobilizing themselves to get PVC so that they can determine in their numbers, because they come to close to 70% of the voting population. And in the midst of their mobilization, a candidate emerged that looked different from the candidates of the existing major political parties, PDP and APC. Peter Obi happens to be that candidate on the platform of Labour Party. Now, the young people who were doing the PVC revolution, because it was very clear they were rejecting the old order. They may not be able to articulate it the way we articulate it, but they know what they are rejecting. They are rejecting corruption, they are rejecting impunity, they are rejecting infrastructural decay, they are rejecting the poverty that's been inflicted on them, they are rejecting the bloodshed happening all over the place. They know what they are rejecting in terms of the symptoms, but they do not know enough about the causative factor, the diagnosis. What is producing this mass killing? What is producing this mass poverty? What's producing this heavy corruption? What's producing this impunity? Lack of opportunities. Constitution. Somehow, those who were marketing themselves for electoral office, threw up something that they say is leadership. Utomi type of people talking about leadership as the problem. Whereas it is the Constitution that is at the base of all the other problems, including the bad leadership. It is the Constitution, the unitary Constitution of Nigeria, that is responsible for the killings going on. The unitary Constitution of Nigeria is responsible for the corruption we see. The unitary Constitution of Nigeria is responsible for the infrastructural decay we see, and all the other things we complain about. And so it is like the tap from where all of this flow. Now, somehow the young people were made to believe that it is now bad leadership, which itself is a product of anomalous constitutional arrangement. Because there's an INEC in Abuja selecting, there's a humongous profit to be made by those who become president and governor. These are all the things that combine to impose the kind of thing we see as leadership in Nigeria. And so these young people, very convinced that they have seen somebody who will provide a different kind of leadership from the type that PDP and APC had provided all the time, now more or less adopted this only virgin from the brothel. The Nigerian political firmament is like a brothel. Peter Obi is the only virgin that has. Let us not question his credentials as holy amongst the devils. And so these young people, thinking they have found the answer to all of what is tormenting them, or what's been tormenting them, in the great leadership that this virtuous candidate will provide. So that PVC revolution immediately transformed itself into what has become Obidient movement. Wonderful. Without doubt, and as a matter of caveat, if we refer back to the rejoinder I had to write to Obasanjo in his New Year Day letter to Nigerians, particularly young Nigerians, where he was endorsing candidate Peter Obi, let us be reminded that in that rejoinder, under the subtitle, addressing that endorsement of Peter Obi by Olusegun Obasanjo, had said that if Nigeria were to go to election today under the option A4 that was used in 1993, that Peter Obi will gather more votes than all the other parties, all the other candidates put together. We still stand by that assessment. In fact, the gap is widening. Not with the exposés, the dancing naked in the marketplace taking place between the candidates of PDP and candidates of APC. The corruption and the impunity that goes with it between the two candidates, the drug conviction, SPV, special purpose vehicle, and all kinds of other. Like we said, Tinubu and Atiku represent everything wrong with Nigeria. But the Peter Obi that is supposed to be that alternative, around whom the young people are aggregating their efforts in the hope that a different leadership will solve the problem of Nigeria, whereas it is the constitution that is the problem. This candidate does not agree with everybody. This candidate had gone on national TV to say that constitution is not the problem. That is a cardinal offense against these young people who have invested their hope for the same candidate that said that the engine of the Nigerian state is knocked. Where is the engine in that vehicle he's loading the Obidient movement people into right now? He goes beyond that to say subsequently at Arewa House, when Akim Baba Ahmed asked him pointedly to assure the North that the unitary arrangements will be sustained, and he pledged to them. Some lady in that meeting was pointing at the picture of Ahmadu Bello. He pledged to the North, Peter Obi did pledge to the North that he will defend, uphold, and govern by that constitution. That's number 2 occasion of siding with the enemy and deceiving these young people who do not know. Of course, will not understand what was being said. And then, to make matters even more abundantly clear, he goes to say that it is one Nigeria that is fighting for. That candidate that is fighting for one Nigeria, if the young people were to know the meaning of one Nigeria, the war of 1967 was levied under the mantra of one Nigeria, preserving one Nigeria. Eastern Nigeria had to be brought back by brute force that consumed the lives of over 3.5 million people. And Gowon, who was the one leading that genocide, had told the whole world that the task keeping Nigeria one is a task that must be performed. So as that task was being performed by beating up Eastern Nigeria, killing on a genocidal scale, that one Nigeria, there was Nigeria, then there came one Nigeria. One Nigeria is unitary Nigeria. One Nigeria is the Nigeria of master and servant. One Nigeria is the Nigeria of Fulani-owned project. One Nigeria means death to Eastern Nigeria. That's how, if you use the phrase one Nigeria, you are saying the Nigeria that kills, the Nigeria that starves its children to death. And so we are talking about squandering of that revolution. The reason for this broadcast is to let everybody know that election is not the solution to the constitution that has to be changed. South Africa could have been going to elections, further elections, but they had a similar problem with apartheid. The problem we have now was what South Africa solved by what they did in 1990. Transition. They suspended the elections under the apartheid constitution to go into CODESA, the meeting, to distill what will be the successor constitutional arrangement. That's what we need to do now. Anything less than that, Nigeria will go up in smoke. And so, this attempt to railroad everybody to election under that constitution, that will reinforce that constitution and keep it alive, at the time our salvation lies in toppling that constitution. It will be tantamount, all this will be tantamount now to squandering that revolution, because the success of that revolution is now being placed at the feet of the caliphate that will conduct that election that P2B will win. We all close our eyes to the fact that there's a Fulani dog in the fight. The Fulani has a dog in the fight. That Fulani is Atiku Abubakar. INEC is 100% in their hands. PVC printing and distribution is in their hand. BVA procurement and distribution is in their hand. What do they call the electoral units? The polling units. Creation and distribution in their hands. The security forces that will work with INEC on the day in question, completely under their control. The chief returning officer for the election, Mahmoud, again, one of their own. And so, at a time this monster has been defeated, at a time the only escape route available to that monster of unitarism has been sucking the blood of Nigerians, at the time the only escape route left for it is to drag us to election. And we who are saying we cannot go to any further elections under that constitution were already carrying the day. One of our own is now providing a lifeline to that monster by dragging us to election, leading the young people who have toppled the old order, because that revolution has succeeded already. It is now being wasted by subjecting it to election that will be conducted. And you see people like Hakim Baba Ahmed going up all over the place trying to persuade everybody that election is the only way to go. Whereas blocking the journey to election in furtherance of our rejection to that constitution, in furtherance of our repudiation of the 1999 constitution, is our own escape route. The two are mutually exclusive. If we go to election, the caliphate carries the day, no matter who wins. If we block the journey to election, we are free from this bondage. And so, between those two, where does Peter Obi stand? Is that where the young people who have adopted him as their candidate, is that where they are going to reinforce that constitution and reinforce their bondage? Their revolution, which already succeeded, because nobody can pretend now that they do not know what the young people are saying or what they seek. That revolution will be squandered if we take everybody to election instead of insisting on a transition to solve this problem once and for all. Let us take a second look. And we see the Buhari that has gone all over the place saying that the only legacy he wants to leave behind is an election that is free and fair. What a cheek. What nonsense. What free and fair election can you anchor on a constitution, crooked constitution, and the global community is clapping? We had our friend in Washington, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, talking about what America will do against. Which democracy can you build on such a constitution that is worse than apartheid? This is direct message to Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State. Let Blinken go to State Department and find out from them what they know about this matter. The constitution upon which Nigeria's democracy is currently being constructed. We do not have any democracy. Anybody who is talking about free and fair election under this worse than apartheid constitution is a criminal. Anybody's hoping that there will be free and fair outcome from the constitution that turned everything upside down is dishonest. No democracy can be built on a constitution of death, on a constitution of exclusion, on a constitution of expropriation. The only comparison being the apartheid constitution in South Africa. In fact, apartheid is better than it. Why do I say so? At least the Boers were building their society, even if it was to the exclusion of the blacks. But what are the Fulanis who imposed this ones doing here, other than to destroy? And so, in South Africa, at least you knew the enemy. Here it's all mixed up. What distinction can I make between the Fulani who imposed that constitution and my kinsman who is prepared to swear to defend and uphold that constitution, like Peter Obi? The consequence is the same for me. That my shackles remain in my hand. That's what Peter Obi says he's going to do. I want the young people to make inquiries about this. The people doing the Obidient movement, this address is directly, made for you, that you have to find out. Have you defined what you want from the revolution you've driven? Is it the change of personnel that will solve this foundational problem? Or the decommissioning of that constitution that tie your legs and your hands? You are being misled by those who are taking you towards election. What can be done now? Because it's one thing to say something is not working, or to say you reject something. It's another to offer alternative. From 1999, when we went into this campaign to rework the damaged constitutional basis of Nigeria, every time we said something was unacceptable, we bring an alternative that everybody can interrogate. That was why we summoned the pro-NACO, sovereign meeting of the ethnic nationalities, 2005, 2006. So we have an alternative to what we are rejecting. We say the 1999 Constitution is the source of all the miseries. And therefore, we came out with a draft that would have taken us back to what was abandoned in Aburi, for everybody to retrieve their sovereignties and their assets and rework the Union of Nigeria back to being a federation that will hold human life sacrosanct, and therefore all men equal, unlike what Sharia brings to the table, unlike what feudalism brings to the table. And so we have the alternative already in place. This energy, what can be done now? What can be done now? We are at the tail end of January. The election is fixed for February 25th. The Obidient movement. What can be done now is to take your revolution and aim it at the base of the problem. The base of the problem is that constitution. Anybody who tells you it is a new president that will become the replacement for constitution, that person is deceiving you. We are telling you authoritatively that the problem is the constitution, 100%, not part of the problem. The whole problem is the constitution. The solution to the problem is to topple that imposition and put the one that have been distilled already. The Yoruba know what they want that will serve them in Nigeria. The Eastern Nigeria know what to serve them. The Middle Belt know what to serve them. And those who have imposed Sharia, who owe it a duty of faith to kill you as infidel, are pursuing something else. Those who say that they are born to rule you, and who are therefore pursuing something that is not democracy, are after their own objectives. That's how Dangote will become the owner of your assets and your right to work those assets. And so we're saying, let that revolution not be wasted, because the cost of wasting it will be humongous. The cost of wasting it may be reckoned in blood. The cost of wasting it will take more than one generation to repair. And the only reason we're about to waste that revolution right now is because of the ignorance of a multitude and the greed of a few who know the truth but choose to hang with their own interests in one corner. Let that revolution be redirected to the base of the problem. We are open, like we always offered, we are open to explain to whoever will come to ask, whoever wants to know how it can be done. We know what to do. We know how to do it going from where we are. That revolution should be able to take down this constitution. If we have 1/4 of the energy that already went into driving that revolution, if we have 1/4 of that energy aiming itself at the base of that constitution will go down. And everybody will be free of the bondage. And in a matter of a few years, nobody will believe that this was the same society that was in decay. But if we decide to waste it by going to an election that can throw up, if Atiku is declared winner of that election, if Tinubu is declared winner of that election, it will be because all of us decide to go to election at a time we should have been going to transition. It will be because they deceived us with the hope that this good man will solve this whole problem. And then we validated the journey to election. That is the outcome we are angling for by going to election. We have no control over the outcome they will declare because everything, like we already told, is in their hand to do. This is the time to listen. This is the time to interrogate specific propositions on the table. Because if this opportunity is lost, by the time the smoke settles, by the time the dust settles, many people will have been buried. And then it may take, we don't know what other routes it will take. We could land in Somalia, we could land in all kinds of rough places. Yugoslavia refused to address the problem, and so it addressed itself. The Soviet Union, as big as it was, became 15, 16 countries. They are still going to, more may still emerge. Czechoslovakia came to their own conclusion in good time. Today there's a Czech Republic, there's Slovakia, peacefully. So we either go the way of Yugoslavia, that addressed itself in the open, in the field, or we go the way of Czechoslovakia by peacefully draw the lines where it could be drawn. And who says we can't remain one political union along the lines of what we agreed in Lancaster House? One thing is what has to be done. The other is how it will be done. We have placed on the table a plan for how to do that which ought to be done in Nigeria now. The young people that ignited this revolution must now take hold of their revolution and not allow anybody to squander it, to waste it in going to election. You have no control over the outcome. I think we can stop there.